how to manage a property. That's the topic for today's episode, and without further ado, let's dive in. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode. For those who are tuning in for the first time, this is your channel for real estate education. Now, today's topic came to me from another viewer. I actually received an email from someone who asked me, how do you manage a property? So I actually went down in memory lane and I had to go back to my prior experiences as to how I actually did to manage a property. So I'm gonna walk you from beginning to end to give you an idea of how I typically go about the relationship building with the tenant and how I actually manage the property at the time. Now, keep in mind, you have to check your local rules. There are some states where you, as the owner or as the investor, you're not allowed to manage your own properties. Last time I checked, New York was actually not one of those, and therefore that's why I did it. But if you have the capital and you actually can afford a property management, I strongly recommend you to do that because it is a 10% very well paid, 12 for some states, but it will free you from so much that you can actually use that time for expanding your real estate portfolio or investing it in your relationship with your family, with your loved ones, right? But if you're just getting started and you don't have the capability to afford one, here's what you're gonna do, right? So you're gonna go ahead and you're going to post a listing on pages like Zillow or Craigslist, Facebook Market, you name it. Make sure you have really, really nice pictures because people like space. And if you don't want to do pictures, you can also do a video. And actually, I released a video not so long ago that talked about how you can actually sell the ideal place, the ideal apartment, or the ideal rental for someone who's looking to rent from you. And here's the link right here. You can check it out. So for those who are working on the posting, make sure the pictures are bright, that the property looks kind of spacious, and always give them your contact information, right? So you can have them to reach out to you via email, call, and then once you build up enough of a list of people who have contacted you, you give them the details about the property and you schedule an open house. So that's how I did it. You schedule the open house. This is the place that's being rented. And why would you want to schedule an open house? Because you will want to get a sense of what it's like to interact with that prospective tenants somewhere down in the future. Now, in my experience, I always do that in person unless I'm delegating the service and have someone else manage my property. But when I used to manage the property, I like to see who was potentially going to be my tenant. Why? Because I need to determine whether this relationship is going to work out for me as well. It's not just so much about the rental and receiving the income. It was also about, is this person going to take away my peace of mind? Is this person somewhat risky to rent it out? Is this person a pain to deal with? Because let's be honest, there are some tenants out there that are very, very obnoxious. So for example, let me try to look back. I think the first time I helped my parents manage their rental, I think 20 years old or something like that. And I did exactly that. I hosted a open house and for 2 hours, and I had an average, I think like 10 people showed up, some families, some of them were young professionals, adults, you name it. So there was a wide array of people that showed up, and you can tell right away why some of those tenants were not going to be good for you. For example, I got the very posh upscale person who was complaining about the cabinets not being aligned or like the color or the lighting. I mean, they're perfectly fine, the cabinets, but I don't know, for whatever reason, this person just didn't think so. And, oh, how often are you going to come by? This person was asking a lot of questions that were somewhat unreasonable, right? Then I got a couple that came in, and this woman was actually very rude, and she was like, well, there's something wrong with this place because you're asking such a low rent and stuff like that. And in my mind, I was like, well, I think it was rate properly, but if you want to give me more money, sure, I will take it. But this person was trying to find anything that there was wrong with the property, and you definitely do not want to rent to someone like that, because down the line there could be a potential lawsuit. They're going to complain, they're going to burn your phone, they're going to call you like for every little thing that they don't think it's right, because in their minds there's something that is wrong. Now, I also interacted with a couple of people who they have not rented before. It was actually their first time, so they didn't really have much of an experience, but they were willing to pay money up front just to make sure you rent it for them. You have to be careful with that. Some people really don't have it and they're genuine and they can afford that, but there are some other people who, for whatever circumstances, they're not willing to wait a little longer and they need to rent a place right away. That's why you need to do a background check. So whether maybe they didn't have a rental record, but they have a criminal record, you don't want to rent to a family like that, or you don't want to rent to a person that has a criminal record. Depends on the circumstances. I don't want to be too judgmental, but just play it by ear. Those are things that you definitely should look out for. In the end, I ended up renting it to a young family. They were in their early 20s and they had kids. And the reason why I decided to rent it for them is because the interaction was actually very pleasant and they went above and beyond to produce the documents. So that in itself told me that they were actually very responsive. They were responsible people because they're willing to make things happen, even though they were young and they didn't want that to be an excuse or a reason to get them to not get the apartment. So that's one. Now, the third one is the actual background check. So there are websites that you can actually go online and you punch in the information that the person provided to you during the application process, and you can get access to their background. How many times was this person evicted, if any? To me, an eviction is a big no-no. It's an automatic disqualifier. You can get access to their credit history. Its credit is a criteria. Now, I've had mixed views when it comes to credit. Yes, I know a lot of people say, well, credit, it's great. It's a big determining factor, but you don't always know what happened with that person's life before they came to your door and asked to rent your unit or your house. Sometimes they have to declare bankruptcy because they got through a divorce and they lost everything. Or maybe this person had just arrived to this country. They just moved to the US and they don't have any credit whatsoever. Obviously, there are other factors that you need to consider. Now, if this person it's very mean and they're very condescending, and on top of that they have poor credit, yeah, forget it. Like, don't rent it to that person. But if you're seeing that they're doing everything possible above and beyond, give them an opportunity. But I'll leave that up to your discretion. My property manager rented one property to a family like that. They were from Asia and they had just arrived to this country maybe about a month or two ago, and they were living with their in-laws and they wanted to find their own place, but unfortunately they didn't get any chance to qualify just because of the fact that they didn't have credit. And so my property manager raised it to my attention and he said, well, I think they're going to be good candidates because they went above and beyond to produce every single document that I've asked for. Like, they turn it around fast enough. They provided employment letters, they provided bank accounts, they do have money, they can afford it. So again, I leave that up to your discretion, but you don't have to go by what I say, but I made a judgment call and it worked out perfectly fine. So now, once you are done through the whole qualifying process, how do you actually manage the property itself? So I've learned that I like to build in add-ins into the lease and give my tenants credit for things that they typically do. So I'm all about streamlining. For example, if you have a house where the grass needs to be cut, the garbage needs to be sorted out, it has to be taken out at a certain day, and I knew that right away I didn't have the time for it, I will build that into the lease. Tenant is responsible for cutting the grass. Tenant is responsible for shoveling the snow, blah, blah, blah. And you said how often they need to do that. For example, in a snowstorm, that's a no-brainer. They have to clean it up right away. But for grass cutting, probably maybe twice a month or something like that, that should be good. And what I do is that if they do those type of services, I give them a credit. So for example, I take I do research and I get an estimate of how much would it be like to pay somebody to cut the grass, and I discount that from the rent. It's streamlining. Some of you might think, well, isn't that the same thing? Not really, because If you're paying somebody to come in and cut the grass, now you're managing two people. You're managing the person who's paying you the rent, and you're also managing the person who's cutting your grass, and you need to make sure that the person shows up on time, yada yada. Meanwhile, if you're doing it all through the tenant, it's a one-stop shop. They will take care of everything, and then you just simply discount it from the rent. Believe me, a lot of tenants will love that. They will love to get a discount on the rent. So give it a try to see if it works out for you. And for security reasons, I also install cameras in the hallway if it's a multifamily unit, and also at the front of the house. But you'll have to check regulations in your state or in your area to see if that's even legal to do that. I do that mostly because of liability reasons. I do that because somebody might fall in front of the house and they might sue you claiming that you didn't take care of certain things. But meanwhile, you have the camera there facing up front, not spying in their premises, not spying on their bedrooms or anything like that, but having it placed in common areas. I put them in the hallways where there's stairs, where people come in and out, just to make sure that everything is still in order, because you cannot be in the property 24/7. So if somebody claims something happened, somebody fell because there was a hole in the door that apparently was there and I never fixed, I can always go back to those security videos and see, hey, there was never a hole in that floor. You actually created that. You're lying, whatever can help you protect yourself against any sort of liability. Same thing with any outdoors camera, checking the vicinities. And it's also for the protection of your own tenants as well, right? You want to make sure they're also safe and that they feel safe in a house that you are providing for them. Another thing I like, it's usually I use electronic locks rather than actual locks, because the password is a lot easier to change and you don't have to keep replacing the keys for every time a tenant moves out, or if they lose it. You don't have to deal with anyone losing their keys in the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning, and they can't get in. Just get one of those electric locks and you just put it in the door, and all they got to do is just punch in a password. If they forget, they can always write it down on their phone, whatever, but it will eliminate the element of surprise. You will not have to deal with those 3 o'clock calls in the morning because they forgot their keys. And last but not least, rent collection. So some of you have seen my video about Venmo. I love Venmo. I always put in a request and I ask for the rent, and they basically transfer the money over to my account. I never left the house. Everything is my account. You can also do that through Zelle. Make sure you put those provisions in the rent contract. Rent can be paid in the form of cash, check, money order, or using electronic services like PayPal or Venmo, or even Zelle for those who have those electronic services, because it leaves an audit trail. Every time you put in a request, it is recorded in your bank statement, is also recorded in Venmo, is also recorded in PayPal. So hey, technology has made it great for us. So that's it. That's all I have on how to manage a property yourself. It worked out for me. If you have any tips that you want to share with the rest of the audience of some practices that you have done that have helped you a lot improve your property management practices, feel free to share it down in the comment down below. And as usual, if you know somebody who's going to benefit from today's video, feel free to share the love and send them the link. And don't forget to subscribe or hit the like button below as well. So that's it for today, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Bye-bye.